Through the thick mist of Everpine Forest, a shadow emerges among the crimson leaves. It's Brady, the German shepherd who vanished without a trace during a life-or-death mission. His fur is matted with mud, his steps uneven, but his amber eyes burn with urgency. He comes to Kiara, not to be rescued, but to lead. An abandoned cabin, deep claw marks on the wooden floor, and a trembling boy hiding in the shadows. Follow the story to uncover why Brady returned at that exact moment, and what dark secret lies hidden within the forest. A thin veil of mist clung to the ancient pines, stretching into wispy ribbons that wove through the gaps between the branches like white smoke. Early autumn mornings in Everpine carried a beauty that held the eye captive. The first rays of sunlight peeked over the ridge, slicing through the fog and painting the forest in a scatter of gold and green. Gentle breezes stirred the maple leaves, now shifting into shades of fiery red and amber in the dappled light. In the distance, the murmur of a stream mingled with the rhythmic tapping of a woodpecker, composing an endless symphony for the sanctuary. Kiara adjusted the strap of her shoulder pack and walked slowly along the trail, blanketed in crisp leaves. Her leather boots were darkened from months spent roaming the preserve, but she didn't mind. Every scuff, every layer of dust was a testament to work she cherished deeply. The morning chill filled her lungs, sharpening her mind while bringing a quiet ease. In her hands, she carried a small notebook, a place to record every encounter, the fresh tracks of a deer, a newly formed squirrel nest, or any subtle shift in the forest's living carpet. For Kiara, patrolling the preserve was more than protecting nature. It was a way to reclaim balance within herself. 3 years ago, she had lost her closest friend in a climbing accident. Since then, she had committed herself to Everpine, a place where each day reminded her of the preciousness of life she could safeguard. Sometimes in the silent stretches of the forest, she felt eyes following her steps, not with threat, but as a quiet companionship. The wind teased her hair, carrying the gentle scent of pine resin. She paused by a gnarled tree trunk, running her hand along its rough bark, feeling the rings of years hidden within. She had read somewhere that trees, like people, stored memories in their layers, moments captured in wood rather than in heart. Thinking of this, she smiled softly. Above, the cry of an eagle pierced the calm. Kiara looked up, spotting a pair of broad wings circling before vanishing toward the western valley. The sight reminded her of her own smallness, yet she felt invigorated, as though the forest itself breathed new energy into her for the long day ahead. She pressed deeper into the woods. Each step on the dry leaves created a subtle rustle, blending with the sound of the stream and the wind to form Everpine's unmistakable rhythm. Here time seemed to slow. One could hear the pulse of their own heart while standing amidst open groves where sunlight gilded everything it touched. Along the trail leading to the rocky stream, Kiara jotted notes, wildflowers blooming earlier than usual, promising a favorable autumn. Deer appearing more frequently in this section, likely drawn by abundant food. These observations would feed into plans for the upcoming conservation season. She stopped to sip from her steel water bottle, her eyes following the sun's rays as they gradually burned away the lingering fog. Sometimes she wondered if she could spend her entire life here. The city, with its clamor and asphalt roads, felt like a distant past. Here, every day began and ended with the wind through leaves and sunsets spilling across the hills. On her way to the next checkpoint, she spotted wolf tracks imprinted in the damp soil, a lone predator passing through. Kiara made a note, feeling a thrill of anticipation. Tracking a carnivore was always a challenge. But today, she did not pursue. Her priority remained to patrol and record the state of the preserve. The sun rose higher, casting golden light across the trail ahead. Even after hundreds of visits, the sight stirred her heart. Every branch, every stone seemed to tell an ancient story, and she was the sole listener day after day. When her radio crackled with a stable signal from the control station, Kiara replied briefly and continued walking. She did not yet realize that this seemingly ordinary morning would unfold into a chain of events that would forever change her life. For a fleeting moment, the wind from the forest edge carried an unusual sound. Was it rustling leaves or the rhythm of someone's footsteps? Kiara tilted her head, curiosity glinting in her eyes before quickening her pace toward the source. The autumn wind shifted again, carrying the scent of damp earth and something sharper, more alive. As Kiara followed the trail toward a clearing, she froze. Amid the deep red leaves carpeting the ground, a shadow emerged through the lingering mist. At first she thought it was a wolf or a stray dog, but a few steps closer made her heart race. It was a German shepherd caked in mud, limping toward her. Its coat, once surely sleek, was matted and heavy with dirt and rotting leaves. Hardened streaks of mud marked its hips and hind legs, evidence of a long journey, possibly across swamps or shallow streams. But the eyes, oh, the eyes, still burned brightly like twin embers of amber beneath the soft morning light. There was no panic in that gaze, only a fierce focus, as if it carried an urgent mission it could not abandon. Kiara lowered herself, hands outstretched in a gesture of trust. She had encountered countless wild animals and even trained canines before, yet this moment felt different, as though its arrival was no accident. At about 10 feet away, she noticed a dark leather collar worn and scratched with age. The metal tag at its center bore clearly etched letters, Ranger K9, Brady. The name Brady echoed in Kiara's mind like a signal. She recalled colleagues speaking of a K9 named Brady, involved in multiple search and rescue missions with the Federal Forest Patrol. Its story had ended abruptly when it went missing over a year ago. Yet here it stood before her, limping but steady eyes unwavering, far from a chance encounter. Brady paused, ears raised, chest heaving. It sniffed the air, keeping its gaze locked on Kiara, ensuring her attention. Then unexpectedly, it turned toward the forest edge, taking a few steps before looking back. The message was unmistakable. It wanted her to follow. Kiara felt a faint jolt run down her spine. Her professional instincts whispered that if Brady had shown up here in this state, something serious was unfolding nearby. Years of working as a forest ranger had taught her to trust the subtlest of signs. A broken branch, an unusual sound, or the gaze of an animal. And now Brady's eyes were the clearest signal she had ever received. She stepped closer, lowering her voice into a calm, steady tone to reassure him. "Hey, Brady." "What's going on, buddy?" Brady didn't take his eyes off her, but his body angled toward the trail leading deeper into the forest. Each time he moved his injured hind leg, Kiara winced. She briefly considered calling it in to base for backup, but the urgent intent in every glance he gave made her hesitate. Calling for help now could cost precious minutes. Minutes during which whatever, or whoever, Brady was leading her to might come to harm. Sunlight filtered more strongly through the canopy, illuminating Brady's amber and black coat in shifting patches as he moved. Despite his fatigue and injury, every motion conveyed the precision and decisiveness of a highly trained canine. The way he sniffed the ground, lifted his head to check direction, and glanced back at Kiara mirrored the exact protocols she had seen during training exercises. Kiara took a deep breath. Following an unfamiliar canine, even one with a unit tag, was risky. But the sensation coursing through her wasn't fear. It was an irresistible pull, a surge of purpose, much like the first day she had set foot in Everpine, knowing the forest would change her life. She stepped back half a pace to observe Brady fully. Mud clung thickest along his left flank and hind legs, suggesting he had crawled across wet ground or slipped down a slope. Small twigs and pine needles still clung around his neck, evidence that he had passed through low, dense underbrush. The metal tag on his collar bore his name along, with a unit number and insignia scratched and weathered, difficult to read completely. "All right, Brady, lead the way." Kiara said, her voice firmer this time. Brady immediately pivoted toward the deep forest, limping, yet moving with agility. Every few dozen meters he glanced back, waiting for Kiara to catch up. She followed, muscles taut with focus, mind racing with questions. Why was Brady here? What had driven him to leave his unit and wander into Everpine? And most pressing, where was he leading her? Her intuition sharpened with every step. This wasn't merely a lost or injured K9. It was something far larger, hidden behind Brady's unwavering gaze and deliberate stride. Each time he paused and lifted his head, the urgency surged like a wave. At a small bend, Brady stopped completely, ears pricked forward, back slightly hunched. Kiara mirrored him instinctively, lowering her body and scanning the terrain. Up ahead, the forest thickened sunlight, barely reaching the ground. Brady turned again, amber eyes locking with hers. And in that instant, Kiara knew she had stepped into a journey that would change everything. She adjusted her backpack straps, tightening them in a silent vow. "Let's go, Brady," she whispered, and together they disappeared into the deep green of Everpine, where answers and dangers awaited. Kiara's footsteps sank into the damp leaf litter as she followed Brady. The trail quickly vanished, replaced by a maze of towering trunks and tangled underbrush. Morning mist still clung to the branches, dripping onto her shoulders whenever a branch shifted. Brady limped, yet never slowed. Each step carried a determined precision, as though he memorized every twist, every root, and every tree in this forest. A sudden slope appeared, slick with thin moss. Kiara planted her feet carefully, gripping a tree for balance. Brady waited at the base, ears erect, eyes tracking every movement. When she began to slip slightly, he stepped forward a few paces, blocking her path as if offering support. Kiara smiled faintly, a strange reassurance blooming in her chest. After descending, the trail wound through an area dense with protruding roots, twisted and knotted like giant serpents. Kiara moved slowly and deliberately, and Brady leapt over the larger roots, glancing back frequently to make sure she followed. Each look from those amber eyes shone with urgency, silently urging, "Hurry, we don't have much time." The sound of water grew clearer initially, just a whisper blended with the wind, then distinct. Brady led Kiara to a narrow, fast-flowing stream cutting across the path. The water was clear, icy enough to produce steam in the morning air. Brady tested a paw, then waded in water rising to his belly. He swam across swiftly, shook off the droplets violently, and glanced back at Kiara, tail wagging in encouragement. Kiara inhaled, rolled up her pant legs, and stepped in. The icy chill made her calves contract, but it was replaced quickly by focus as she balanced on slippery rocks. Reaching the opposite bank, she found Brady waiting, eyes fixed on her without a moment's lapse. Together they pressed deeper into the forest, where sunlight filtered only through tiny gaps, casting scattered pools of light on the damp earth. The air grew thicker, saturated with the scent of decaying wood and forest floor. Occasionally bird calls pierced the quiet, then abruptly fell silent, as if something moved in the shadows. Kiara synchronized her heartbeat with Brady's steady rhythm, a sense of unity settling over them. Another slope emerged, taller and more rugged. Brady climbed ahead, claws gripping the soil and stones. Near the summit, he turned to watch Kiara ascend. She felt an undeniable connection forming between them. Silent, unspoken, communicated through eyes and steps alone. The hilltop opened onto a sparse pine grove. Wind gusted stronger here, carrying a strange scent, metallic, smoky. Brady paused, inhaled sharply, then veered northwest. Kiara followed, closely, soaked boots sliding over damp ground, but each step felt lighter, propelled by determination rather than fatigue. The trail led them into a low, leaf-strewn hollow, each step crunching underfoot. Brady quickened his pace, ears always alert to the path ahead, yet maintaining the habit of glancing back every few dozen meters. Kiara realized this wasn't just the instinct of a canine protecting a partner. It was the trust he placed in her, a person he had just met, now already a companion in this unfolding mission. The sky above gradually brightened, signaling that morning had passed into the late hours. Kiara knew she was approaching whatever Brady sought to lead her to. Alongside the excitement, however, a simmering sense of caution crept in. Every sound, every subtle shift in the wind, could be a sign of something hidden ahead. Suddenly, Brady halted in a sun-dappled hollow, his legs slightly bent, body taut as a drawn bow. He lifted his head, amber eyes fixed on a distant point, then turned to look at Kiara. In that gaze she read both a warning and an invitation to continue. Kiara tightened the straps of her backpack and nodded. "Lead the way, Brady." Together they stepped forward again, the crunch of leaves under her boots, blending with the soft scrape of his paws, carried along by the distant whisper of wind. Everpine was no longer the serene morning sanctuary it had been. It had become a living pose where every bend and beam of light hinted at untold stories. Everpine shifted with every step they took. The pale golden light of dawn filtered through the canopy above, slowly swallowed by the dense layers of trees, leaving only faint, scattered beams on the forest floor. The cool, crisp air had thickened now, heavy with moss and decaying wood, a scent Kiara could taste with every breath. Brady moved ahead, his pace slowing, body lowered, each step placed with deliberate care. His ears pivoted in every direction, capturing the slightest sound. Kiara adjusted immediately, stepping lightly to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. The wind had vanished entirely. Leaves trembled without the familiar whisper of air. Even the birds, the constant background of any patrol, were silent. The sudden stillness was like an invisible veil draped over everything, making each footfall feel louder than ever. Kiara scanned the surroundings. Trees here grew closer together, forming dark, natural corridors. Shifts in light, stirred by even the faintest breeze, cast long, shifting shadows. She focused on steadying her breathing, yet unease seeped into every crack of her mind. A faint noise echoed. Neither bird nor wind, but the subtle rustle of disturbed earth. Brady froze instantly, tilting his head, amber eyes widening. Kiara stayed still, following the line of his gaze, seeing only a shadowed expanse among the trunks, deep and dense as a wall. They continued, and Kiara began noticing other irregularities. In several spots, the soil had been turned over, exposing damp earth beneath. Deep scratches marked the ground as if clawed or dug by a heavy implement. On a nearby tree, bark had been peeled off in jagged chunks, fresh enough that sap still glistened. Brady approached a large tree, sniffing intently before looking back at her. His eyes seemed to say, "We're getting closer." Kiara bent down, placing her hand on the stripped bark, feeling the slick wetness of the sap. Every sign indicated that someone, or something, had been here not long before them. The air grew heavier with every step. Rare beams of light were muted further by thin smoke or cold mist. Kiara felt the forest constricting around them, enclosing them in a space where only the beating of their hearts remained audible. Abruptly, Brady stiffened. His entire body tensed like a bowstring, hackles raised. He stepped back half a pace, then forward again, sniffing sharply. Kiara gripped her backpack straps, sensing the tension radiating from him. Her instinct screamed that whatever lay ahead did not want to be found. She advanced a step, eyes fixed on his back, every sense honed in on the slightest movement or sound in the forest. Then, a sharp snap of a dry branch, clear, close, heavy. Kiara clenched her hands, but kept her steps steady. Brady turned his head, amber eyes locking onto hers, reassuring her that he had the situation under control. Then he moved on, silently, but resolutely leading the way. Deeper they went, darkness creeping in the ground, uneven with roots as large as human arms reaching up to block the path. Brady navigated each obstacle skillfully, maintaining just enough distance to keep Kiara within sight. Her breathing slowed, not from exhaustion, but from focused awareness. Unease didn't mean stopping. It was a reminder to remain vigilant with every passing second. Watching Brady advance with unwavering determination, she felt a quiet power spreading within her. The power of purpose, of loyalty, and of a bond just beginning to form between human and canine. Then a faint light flickered ahead, sneaking through the trees like a promise of something soon to be revealed. Brady lifted his head, quickened his pace slightly, and stopped at the edge of a thickly wooded clearing. Kiara approached slowly, heart pounding. Ahead, the darkness remained dense, but she sensed she was about to cross a threshold, where answers awaited alongside dangers she could not yet imagine. Brady froze abruptly, claws sinking into the soft soil as if marking a critical point. Kiara slowed, eyes tracing the direction of his focus. Amidst the shadowed forest, a low, silent shape emerged. A weathered wooden cabin nearly blending into the surrounding trees. The cabin's wooden walls were silvered by time, each plank darkened and moss-covered, patched in uneven shades like the cloak of an old wanderer. Vines twisted from the ground to the roof, curling around the dimmed window frames as if trying to hold something inside. The roof, made of thick wooden shingles, sagged in places, exposing a dark void beneath the rotting wood. The front door was slightly ajar, a narrow slit letting in a pale, ghostly light. Its edges peeled with age, revealing gray-tinged wood, and the rusted hinges creaked, ready to scream under a gust of wind. On the threshold, dry leaves piled high, covering the cracks in the boards as though no one had stepped here for years. Brady stood close to the edge of the clearing in front of the cabin, head held high, was inhaling every draft of air that seeped out from within. His ears tilted slightly back, signaling that the scent was unusual. Kiara felt the weight of the space around them, the air thick with the smell of rotting wood, damp moss, and a faint metallic tang. She stepped closer, eyes scanning the cabin to take in every detail. To the left of the main door was a small window, its glass fogged and caked with years of dust, impossible to see through. At the far right of the porch, a wooden chair leaned precariously on one broken leg. White wildflowers poked through the gaps in the steps, fragile splashes of life against the desolation. Kiara inhaled deeply, forcing her heartbeat to slow. Each step toward the cabin felt like descending into a forgotten story. The sensation was both compelling and cautionary, as if the forest itself was testing her courage. Brady glanced at her amber eyes, asking the silent question, "Ready?" She nodded slightly. Her right hand tightened around the strap of her backpack, her left adjusted the flashlight hanging at her side. Before stepping fully onto the porch, Kiara paused for a few seconds to take a final look. A gentle wind stirred the vines, casting flickering shadows across the wooden walls. From the narrow door gap, the darkness inside the cabin seemed to beckon, yet hid something unpredictable. She stepped onto the first wooden step. A creak echoed strangely through the silent forest. Brady stayed close at her feet, body low, ready to react. When Kiara touched the doorknob, the cold metal bit into her hand, a chill unusual compared to the forest's damp air. She pushed gently. The door gave way, hinges squealing a long, mournful cry as if lamenting decades of abandonment. A draft of cold, dusty air spilled out, curling into her lungs. Brady sniffed deeply, then advanced half a step, nose nearly pressed against the crack. Kiara froze, muscles taut. She knew that crossing this threshold meant stepping into a secret Brady had been guiding her toward. And once inside, the calm of the forest outside would no longer exist. She looked at Brady again. His gaze answered all questions. "Let's go." The door swung a little wider, and the darkness inside seemed to swallow them both. The shadows engulfed every shape the instant Kiara and Brady crossed the threshold. The faint light from the gap behind them cast a narrow line on the dusty floor, a single path back out. The rest of the room was bathed in a dull gray light seeping through warped boards and the fogged window. A heavy mustiness hit Kiara's senses as she inhaled, mingled with the acrid scent of decayed wood and rusted metal. The cabin air was colder than the forest, as if it had trapped the breath of long winters past. Brady moved a few steps ahead, claws tapping softly on the floor, nose low tracing every corner. Kiara switched on her flashlight. The narrow yellow beam cut through the haze, illuminating details that made her stomach sink. Along the left wall, a thick rope lay loosely coiled on the floor. Frayed and old, it still bore fresh tension marks, evidence of recent use. Below it, a broken wooden chair lay toppled, its seat scarred with deep scratches. She swung the beam across the room. Long drag marks streaked the floor from the center to a shadowed corner, as if someone had been pulled. Nearby walls bore chaotic claw marks, some deep enough to strip the outer layer of wood. The colors of the scratches varied, showing a mix of old and new, a silent timeline of torment. Brady stopped at a corner where a thin, crumpled blanket lay curled in dust, its form still shaped by a human body. He sniffed ears, pricked eyes, locked on a point just beyond. Kiara approached, bending down to inspect. Behind the blanket, part of the wall had been removed, revealing crossed wooden beams and a narrow cavity enough to hide something. Her heart pounded. This cabin wasn't just abandoned. It had held someone captive, not briefly. Every trace told a story of resistance, despair, and attempts to escape. She stood, sweeping her gaze across the room, once more searching for overlooked details. A small table in a distant corner was cluttered with empty bottles, some tipped over their contents, dried into brown streaks. Next to it, a dented metal bowl lay overturned. The low ceiling revealed exposed beams, dangling bits of frayed rope. A sudden draft slipped through a side gap, causing a cord hanging from a beam to sway. The creaking joined the sound of Brady's deep breaths. He moved from the corner to a small rear door, sniffing the frame before glancing back at Kiara. She approached, hand on the knob. Cold and clammy, the heavy air spilling from the crack thicker than ever. She twisted gently, but the door stuck as if something blocked it. Brady's gaze urged her forward. Whatever mattered lay beyond. Instead of forcing it, Kiara stepped back to analyze calmly. Each detail in the cabin connected the rope drag marks, claw scratches, the blanket, and the cavity behind the wall. Together they revealed one truth. This place had been used to confine someone, perhaps more than one, long enough to leave each trace behind. Brady sat before the jammed door, muscles taut, ready to spring. Kiara felt the space shrink outside, forest sounds vanished, leaving only her heartbeat and Brady's breath. She knew she had stepped into the center of an untold story. From this moment, the path ahead would not be an ordinary patrol. Her hand tightened on the flashlight handle, meeting Brady's steadfast amber gaze. In the damp darkness, they shared a silent resolve to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. The light swept slowly across the rotting walls. Kiara approached the jammed rear door. Pushing with her shoulder, the rusty hinges squealed, and a gust of colder air rushed out, heavier with the cabin's stench. Brady entered first, head low, ears alert. After a few steps, he stopped abruptly before a wooden plank leaning against the wall. His tail twitched, eyes fixed on the darkness behind. Kiara stepped closer, crouched down, and noticed that the floorboard was rotting, revealing a narrow gap. She took a deep breath, carefully tilted the board to one side. Light spilled in, and her heart skipped a beat. A teenage boy curled up in the tight corner, knees pulled to his chest, arms wrapped around himself. His skin was pale like morning mist, and his hair matted into clumps from dust and sweat. Baggy, ill-fitting clothes were streaked with dirt. His thin fingers trembled slightly with every rapid breath. Kiara knelt, keeping her voice gentle. "Hey, are you okay?" The boy's eyes opened wide with panic like a cornered animal. But when he saw Brady standing nearby, the terror slowly shifted into wary suspicion. He didn't answer, only huddled closer to the wall. Brady sat down, not moving any closer, simply observing. Its amber eyes radiated warmth, calm, no pressure. Slowly, Andy. Kiara guessed the name from a faint symbol on the rubber bracelet around his wrist. Tilted, his head eyes fixed on Brady, as if searching for reassurance. Kiara opened her backpack, pulling out a water bottle and an energy bar. She set them down on the floor, nudging them slightly toward him. Andy stared at the bottle, then back at Kiara, still silent. He lifted a hand, hovering over it, without touching, then nodded slightly as if to acknowledge, but not yet ready. Through the flashlight beam, Kiara noticed small scratches along his arms, some bruises, old, some fresh. His left wrist bore a deep red mark, a sign of having been tightly bound. A dull ache pulsed from her chest up to her throat, but she forced herself to maintain a calm expression. "You're Andy, right?" she asked softly. The boy blinked, then nodded. Instead of speaking, he raised his hand, pointing toward the back door of the cabin, then clutched his knees. His eyes conveyed urgent, wordless messages. Fear, fragility, the silent cry of someone who had just escaped darkness. Kiara understood Andy was too terrified or too shocked for words. All communication was now through eyes alone. A gaze full of the fear of being pursued and the fragility of someone just emerging from the shadows. Brady moved half a step forward, lowering its head nose, brushing lightly against Andy's knees. The boy flinched slightly, but did not pull back. A moment of silence stretched on, then Andy slowly relaxed his shoulders, his trembling hand reaching out to rest atop Brady. The touch was shaky, but unmistakably a sign of trust beginning to form. Kiara stayed still, letting him regain steady breathing. She knew every second mattered, both to calm Andy and to understand what had happened. But in that moment, she also felt an urgent need to get out of the cabin as soon as possible. The flashlight beam swept across again, catching a crumpled piece of paper at Andy's feet. He blinked when she noticed, then shook his head, clutching it tightly. Kiara didn't push, only gave a slight nod, silently communicating respect. The wind outside shifted, suddenly rattling the front door. Andy stiffened, eyes darting toward the sound. Kiara leaned over, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. Brady and I are here." Brady rose and moved toward the back door, ears high. Kiara realized she needed to contact the center immediately for backup. But before reaching for her radio, she caught Andy's gaze. Still trembling, but a faint glimmer of hope now flickered in his eyes. She knew that glimmer was what she had to protect. A soft sound came first, distant and faint, like a heartbeat passing through the old wooden walls. Seconds later, it became unmistakable footsteps, heavy and slow, pressing into the layer of dry leaves outside the cabin. Each step deliberate, as if someone knew exactly where they were going. Brady reacted instantly. Ears pricked, body taut like a drawn bow, muscles under its amber coat rippling visibly. A low growl emerged from deep in its chest, not threatening, but alert, ready. Its amber eyes never left the door, every movement precise, focused. Kiara felt her pulse spike. Instinct whispered that these steps were no accident. She drew Andy close, placing him behind her. He still trembled, but didn't resist. His wide eyes followed Brady, as if the dog was the only wall between him and the darkness outside. A gust of wind blew through a crack in the door, carrying the scent of damp earth and something acrid. Kiara tilted her head, listening. The footsteps outside halted, giving way to a dense silence where she could hear her own breathing clearly. She reached into her jacket, pulling out the radio. A faint crackle emitted as she pressed the button. "Center. This is Kiara at Everpine. I need emergency support coordinates." She read each number clearly, eyes scanning for any escape route if the worst happened. The voice from the dispatch came urgent but steady. "Copy, Kiara. Nearest unit en route ETA 15 minutes. Hold a safe position. 15 minutes. Brief for someone safe, but here in the cabin amid the forest, it could feel like eternity. Brady moved toward the door, deliberate and strong. Its neck hair bristled with each gust, eyes fixed on the dark outside. Kiara knew it was analyzing every environmental cue, leaves wind ground vibrations. Outside footsteps resumed circling the cabin's side. She heard rustling leaves, branches snapping aside, and the dull thump of something solid hitting the wooden wall. Andy flinched, clutching her sleeve. Silent, but his thin hand radiated tense fear. Kiara whispered, "Stay quiet. Everything will be fine." Brady reached the small side window, pausing for seconds, then suddenly turned to Kiara, eyes signaling. She understood the intruder was right there. She moved Andy to the corner, hidden from any outside view. Suddenly, a dry branch snapped nearby. Brady advanced toward the front door, head low, shoulders, tense, breath steady. Kiara gripped the radio, her other hand ready to protect Andy if the door burst open. The footsteps were now just outside the porch. Each step felt like a pulse against her chest. Then, silence. A dense pause, as if whoever was outside was listening. In those moments, all she could hear were the wind through the roof dust falling from the beams and Brady's deep breaths. She realized the dog was waiting for the signal to act, a trained canine instinct in full alert. From outside, a sudden sound echoed as if someone was trying the door handle. The old hinge screeched sharply. Brady instantly shifted its weight body, leaning slightly forward. Andy huddled closer, eyes wide, hands clutching Kiara's sleeve even tighter. Kiara lifted the radio to her mouth, pressing the call button once more. "They're very close. Need backup fast." The response crackled through the static, but she caught a few words: on, way, hold tight. Outside footsteps sounded again this time, retreating slightly, circling around the back of the cabin. Kiara knew this did not mean the danger had passed. If anything, it felt more like a predator marking its territory than leaving. Her gaze met Brady's. The dog remained alert, ears swiveling to catch every faint sound. Kiara understood that a single misstep could ignite the threat instantly. Somewhere deeper in the woods, another sound resonated, heavier and more urgent, as if signaling that the next few moments would be critical. Suddenly, the noise exploded like a hammer smashing through the silence. The rotten wooden door shuddered violently before flying open, splinters scattering into the dim air of the cabin. A large man appeared in the doorway, his silhouette swallowing the faint light from outside. His thick coat was caked with mud and fallen leaves, collar raised to obscure part of his face, but his eyes gleamed with cold cruelty. Broad shoulders blocked the entrance, a rough hand gripping a wooden baton. Knuckles pale from the tight hold. He scanned the room swiftly like a blade slicing through the shadows before locking eyes on Kiara. His voice was low and gravelly, each word dragged over grit. "You shouldn't be here. Hand the boy over and leave." The threat in his tone carried the certainty of a man who believed he controlled the entire situation. His boots creaked against the wooden floor as he stepped into the cabin. Kiara felt Andy shiver behind her. The boy clung tightly to her eyes, fearful, trying to control his breathing. Kiara lowered herself, shielding Andy in her arms, her voice firm yet controlled. "This boy needs protection. I've called for backup." The man curled his lips into a sneer. He took another step, raising the baton across his shoulder, arm muscles coiling. "You think anyone will make it here in time? This forest belongs to me." In an instant, Brady moved. From the corner near the window, it launched like a living arrow. Its amber coat, bristled hind legs, coiled eyes blazing in the dim light. A deep, resonant growl surged from its chest, vibrating through the cabin. As the man turned toward the sound, Brady struck. With the precision and strength of a trained canine, it clamped down on his arm, holding the baton. The baton clattered to the floor. The man roared in pain, staggering. Brady held on all its weight, pressing through clenched jaws, front paws braced against his chest to maintain balance. Kiara seized the moment. She kicked the baton away and held the radio retreating as she spoke rapidly. Armed suspect partially restrained, need immediate reinforcement. The man swung violently, trying to shake Brady off. He struck at the dog with his free hand, but each blow only made Brady tighten its grip. Its eyes never left the target, breathing steady yet intense, each movement measured to prevent him from advancing further. Dust swirled in the cabin, illuminated by light spilling through the open doorway. Andy pressed himself into the corner, eyes wide with terror and awe at the scene unfolding. The man staggered, taking a few steps toward the door. Brady used the opportunity, lowering its head and jerking sharply to the side, forcing him to tilt to maintain balance. Kiara stepped forward quickly, yanking at his arm to create distance. "Andy, stay put," she shouted, eyes never leaving him. The man spat a curse, thrashing to dislodge Brady. Eventually, he broke free from the dog's jaws, but his arm was bleeding, his coat torn. Brady backed up a step, still poised and ready, head low, ears erect, gaze locked on the man. A tense silence filled the cabin. The man panted, clutching the tear in his jacket as blood seeped through. He glanced at Andy, then stared at Kiara with raw fury. "You'll regret this," he growled, retreating slowly, steps heavy but cautious. Brady advanced half a step, low growl, rumbling, forcing him fully into the narrow yard outside the cabin. Kiara stood still, listening to the crunch of leaves under his boots. Only when the noise blended with the wind did she relax her shoulders. Brady remained alert, eyes and ears scanning the dark beyond the doorway. She bent down, stroking its neck gently, feeling the heat and still heavy panting. "Good job, Brady." In the distance, the wail of approaching emergency sirens grew from faint to sharp. Kiara's eyes met Andy's. Fear still lingered, but a flicker of something else shone through. Trust. The respite was brief. Just as the man's silhouette faded from the threshold, a sudden movement made Kiara freeze. His injured arm dropped to his side, and in a flash, a knife gleamed under the light streaming through the cabin doorway. Steel reflected the dying sunlight, cold and sharp. The man lunged forward with the speed of a predator. Brady reacted instantly, sidestepping just enough to evade the strike. The knife passed close to its neck. With agile precision, it sprang to the opposite side, feet skimming the old wooden floor. Its bark, deep and commanding, reverberated through the cramped cabin, causing Andy to shrink further into the corner. The man gritted his teeth, spinning and continuing to swing. Each strike aimed at the empty space Brady had just vacated. But the dog moved like a seasoned warrior, always keeping distance, observing, waiting for the perfect moment to counter. Kiara grabbed Andy's arm, signaling him deeper into the cabin. "Move quickly," she whispered, eyes locked on the knife-wielding threat. They retreated step by step, but before reaching the cabin's back wall, the man spun suddenly, cutting off their path. His movement was swift, back nearly brushing the wall, eyes cold and unyielding. "Nobody leaves here until I say so," he growled each word. Kiara felt Andy's heartbeat spike through the hand she held tightly. She pulled him back another half step, her body forming a shield between him and the knife. Calculations spun through her mind. Tight space, the attacker's weapon longer, only Brady could bridge this gap. As if reading her thoughts, Brady stepped forward, lowering its body claws, digging into the wooden floor for leverage. Its gaze locked on the hand, gripping the blade, every muscle taut and coiled. The man gave a thin smile, the knife twisting in his grip, steel flashing again. "Step back. This dog won't save you." Before he could finish, Brady lunged. Not at the arm this time, but lower at the supporting leg. The impact threw him off balance. His knee buckled for a fleeting moment, Metal clanged against wood as the knife skidded off, sticking into the floor. Brady retreated to a safe distance, barking incessantly, each bark urging Kiara into action. Seizing the moment, Kiara pulled Andy toward the far side of the cabin, searching for a hidden corner or an escape route. But the room offered none, only the main door, the windows too small and overgrown with vines to exit quickly. The man growled in frustration, yanking the knife from the floor. Blood had seeped across his sleeve, but his eyes burned even fiercer. Step by step, he advanced, closing the distance. Brady moved again, positioning itself squarely between him and Kiara. Its amber coat, bristled teeth bared hot breath, fogging the musty air. A low, steady growl resonated like a drumbeat, threatening and unyielding. Kiara knew the confrontation would erupt again at any second. She pressed Andy close, tilting her body to shield him, eyes fixed on the predator and the four-legged warrior facing off. A brief, tense silence hung. Then, like a flash of lightning, the man lunged, knife aimed at Brady. In that heartbeat, the dog's growl cut through, mingling with the whistle of the blade, a prelude to the next clash, as distant sirens began to wail. Brady's strike missed the hand again, instead smacking into the man's hip. The blow forced him to step back instinctively, twisting to keep the dog in view. Seizing the advantage, Brady spun like a whirlwind, then bolted toward the door. Its long legs stretched to full reach, amber fur catching the sunlight outside, leaving a trail of dust and the earthy scent of the forest. It barked loudly, glancing back as if signaling Kiara let him out. Teeth clenched, the man's grip on the knife remained firm, but his focus shifted from Kiara and Andy. His predatory instinct, ignited by Brady, now drove him forward. He surged out of the cabin. Kiara pressed Andy against the wall, holding complete silence. She could hear every heavy step outside, mixed with the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. Outside, Brady led him across the narrow yard, then straight onto the trail down the slope. Its breaths were rapid, but controlled, powerful legs, propelling it over protruding roots and moss-covered rocks. The man followed, heavy, relentless, each stride pressing with force. His labored breathing and pounding heart meshed with the snapping twigs and crunching leaves beneath him. Everpine Forest seemed to close in around them. Autumn gold canopies blotted out the sky, letting through only scattered light patches on the damp forest floor. The wind whispered through leaves, merging with Brady's barks, forming an auditory path that drew him further from the cabin. Brady weaved constantly, darting left, around a gnarled oak, then straight through chest-high ferns. Each maneuver forced the man to exert himself, striving not to fall behind. His breath grew harsher. Sweat and the scent of pine and earth clung to the air. But the glint of his knife continued to flash. Whenever he entered a shaft of light, signaling that his intent had not waned. Brady maintained the perfect distance, close enough to provoke, far enough to evade the blade. Its ears twitched with every glance, back eyes calculating the next move. The terrain shifted as they delved deeper. Slopes became uneven, slippery with decomposing leaves. Large rocks forced Brady to leap, while the man ground his teeth, gripping ledges to avoid falling. Brady's heartbeat synchronized with the forest. Each exhaled puff of white air dissipated instantly in the pale light. Every stride drove power through taut muscles, propelling it forward. Wind gusted stronger near a narrow gorge, cliffs rising on both sides. Sound echoed, turning Brady's bark into a prolonged battle horn. The man pressed on, but exhaustion was evident. His strides faltered, each obstacle forcing him to brace and gasp. Yet he remained caught in the chase Brady orchestrated. From a distance, Kiara reached the cabin door, observing into the forest. She kept Andy close, tracking the patches of light where Brady's golden silhouette appeared and vanished. She understood Brady's goal wasn't just to lure him from the cabin. It was to buy time for the rescue team to close in. The chase continued, breaths ragged, blending with forest sounds, a frantic chorus heralding the storm about to break. Brady led the man deeper into Everpine ancient trees interlocking to obscure the sky. The trail narrowed the soil, turning damp gray wind howling, mixing with labored breathing. The man surged steps heavy in mud and fallen leaves. Sweat streaked his cheeks and soaked his dark collar, but his eyes remained fixed on the amber blur ahead. Suddenly, Brady veered left through thick ferns, then shot toward the glittering light at the trail's end. The man's teeth clenched in pursuit, unaware that the forest's sounds had changed. Rushing water and stronger wind heralding an open expanse. Just a few steps more, and he froze. Ahead was a sheer cliff over 10 meters high. Below, the autumn stream churned gray-silver water reflecting scattered sunlight. No other path remained, only the suffocating gap between him and Brady. The dog stood a few meters away from him, front legs slightly bent, head lowered, golden eyes locked onto every movement. Its deep amber coat shimmered under the sun, the fur along its neck and back bristling like a natural armor. Brady breathed in measured puffs, but its heartbeat remained steady. It knew the moment had come. The man's eyes darted, searching for an escape, only to meet sheer rock faces and dense underbrush. His hand gripped the knife tightly as he stepped back to the cliff's edge. A flash of desperation mixed with aggression lit his gaze. Brady moved. In a single stride, the distance closed. The sound of claws scraping the damp earth echoed sharply. Then, like an arrow loosed from a bow, it surged forward, body coiled with raw strength. The impact struck him squarely, knocking the wind out of his lungs. The sudden force pushed him sideways. His knife-wielding hand lost balance, the steel blade glinting as it spun through the air before clattering onto the edge of the rocks and disappearing into the swirling water below. The metallic clang into the stream marked the end of his dominance. He tried to rise, hands braced against the ground, body trembling from exhaustion. But as he lifted himself, Brady was already there, standing squarely between him and any possible escape. White teeth flashed, golden eyes unwavering. The man froze. No knife, no route to flee. Only the cold wind whipping across his neck and the dog's low, steady growl of final warning. Brady remained planted paws, gripping the earth near the cliff edge, ready to counter any resistance. His breaths came in heavy pulls, each exhalation trailing mist into the autumn air. The dog, unyielding as living rock, forced him into absolute deadlock. From deep within the forest came the distant wail of sirens and approaching footsteps, signaling the tightening perimeter. Brady, like a warrior who had completed his mission, stood guard waiting for the final moment. The siren's wail echoed through the trees like horns announcing the end of a tense battle. Initially faint, blending with the autumn wind and trickling water below the cliff, the sound grew sharper and stronger, slicing through the dense forest air. Brady still blocked the man's stance, firm body, leaning slightly forward, golden eyes glued to the target. Though muscles beneath the amber fur tensed, his breathing remained steady, each exhale a mist merging with the cool fall breeze. The man had lost his initial aggression. He bent over, hands pressed to the muddy ground, shoulders trembling from fatigue. Sweat and dirt streaked his cheekbones, eyes darting in search of a last opportunity. But every escape route was blocked by the cliff behind him and the watchful eyes of the dog ahead. Leaves rustled from multiple directions. Moments later, Kiara emerged from the right trail, her dark ranger uniform blending with the forest, yet each step sharp and decisive. A radio on her shoulder clicked faintly with static from the command center. Behind her, 2 support officers, each equipped with handcuffs and tactical flashlights, spread out, gradually closing in on the cliff. Brady Kiara's voice rang out, not hurried but calm and confident. Brady stepped back half a pace, still locked on the man, giving Kiara and her team room to approach. The man lifted his head, breathing, ragged eyes flashing a last defiant spark. But before he could turn, an officer closed from the left, twisting his wrist behind his back. A sharp click sounded as the metal cuffs locked silver, gleaming under the sunlight filtering through the leaves. He collapsed to his knees, forced to sit on the ground. The smell of damp earth, decaying leaves, and his ragged breaths mingled into the final portrait of a predator subdued. Brady stepped forward, standing beside Kiara, tilting his head slightly to observe. Ears pricked, gaze fixed, unwavering, until Kiara placed a gentle hand on his back, sending a signal of reassurance. Kiara crouched, looking the man in the eye. "It's over," she said, calm, yet weighted with the authority of someone who had survived a life-or-death encounter. The other two officers approached quickly, searching him and confiscating any remaining items from his pockets and belt. Every movement precise, coordinated, the shrill siren now silenced, leaving only the steady sounds of the autumn forest. Farther off, another team escorted Andy to a safer location. The boy, wrapped in a thin blanket, still showed traces of shock in his eyes, but the sheer terror had faded. When Andy's gaze met Brady's, his lips twitched as if to speak, then merely nodded, a small gesture heavy with gratitude. The autumn wind swept through the cliff, carrying the scent of pine and flowing water. Kiara inhaled deeply, feeling the tension in her chest slowly release. The chase struggle and perilous moments receded, replaced by the certainty that they had arrived in time. Brady lifted his head, golden eyes still alert but now carrying a new light, the assurance of knowing the team was safe. His dark amber coat gleamed in the sunlight, standing out against the green forest and gray rock, a symbol of strength and loyalty. At the cliff's edge, the remaining personnel prepared to escort the man out of the reserve, leaving the area to the quiet breathing of nature. As he was led away, Kiara signaled another team to return to the cabin for a thorough search. Brady followed closely, each step silent and deliberate, as if ensuring the threat had truly been neutralized. The path back to the cabin seemed shorter, yet each step echoed the aftermath of the confrontation. By the time they arrived, sunlight pierced the foliage more deeply, scattering golden streaks across weathered walls. The old wooden door, once ajar, now opened wider, revealing the dense darkness inside. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and old smoke. A support officer switched on a flashlight, sweeping the moss-streaked walls before crouching to inspect the floor. In the cabin's left corner, beneath a warped floorboard, they discovered an old gray metal box, scratched and worn. Kiara, wearing gloves, opened the lid to reveal a few folded papers, a yellowed map, and an old mobile phone battery long dead. The map lay spread across the old, worn wooden table. Faint lines and red ink markings traced a trail through Everpine Forest, stretching toward the edge of the conservation area. Certain points were circled, heavily annotated, with letters and numbers that Kiara hadn't yet deciphered. Scattered sheets held lists of names and brief, hurried notes, their handwriting slanted and erratic. Some names had been crossed out, replaced with question marks. Kiara's eyes paused on two bold words written in the corner: transaction. The phone, though outdated, had been carefully inspected by one of the staff. "We might be able to extract data," he said in a low voice. "If we're lucky, we'll find messages or call logs tied to this." While the team searched the cabin, Andy sat on a chair near the door, tightly wrapped in a blanket. His face still carried the pallor of recent trauma, but his eyes had begun to regain focus. When Kiara approached and sat at his level, Brady moved closer too, sitting calmly by his side like a living shield. "Andy," Kiara spoke gently, "can you tell me what happened? Just start from when you were brought here." The boy swallowed, eyes drifting toward the window as if gathering scattered memories. "I don't know everything," Andy began, his voice small but clear. "I overheard them saying this was just a temporary holding spot. The others, they're somewhere else, deeper in the forest." Kiara and the team froze for a moment. A staff member quickly scribbled notes, glancing at the map. "I was brought here about 3 days ago," Andy continued. "Before that, I was held in a house near the old town. The night before last, they moved stuff out. I heard trucks and they mentioned Area 4. Kiara pointed to a number 4, marked on the map. Tucked near a narrow mountain pass, a place rarely visited because of its rough terrain. Brady shifted slightly, ears pricked at the sound of the wind through the trees, then settled again, sensing the importance of this conversation. Kiara's voice remained gentle. Do you remember anything about the others you were with, or who brought you here? Andy hesitated, then nodded faintly. I remember a voice, deep and hoarse. They called him the Old Man, and I think he was the one making all the decisions. The staff member quickly added new notes to the log. Combined with the map papers and the phone, a far wider picture was beginning to emerge than anyone had anticipated. Kiara looked at Andy, her gaze firm yet soft. You've done really well, Andy. From now on, we'll figure out how to end this together. Outside, the late morning sunlight filtered down through the forest canopy. But inside the cabin, the air felt heavy with the realization that they had only just scratched the surface of a much deeper web. Brady shifted slightly, eyes locked on the map, as if it too understood that the journey ahead was far from over, and what they had uncovered was just the beginning. Sunlight streamed through the cabin slats, casting pale golden streaks across the worn wooden floor. The air was still damp, carrying a faint trace of long-settled smoke. But the tension had eased slightly. Andy remained in the chair near the table, clutching his blanket. His face had regained some color, but his eyes still held fragments of the day's fearful images. Kiara sat opposite him without hurry. She set a warm cup of water in front of him and waited until he took a small sip. Brady lay close by, head slightly raised, ears alert, silently observing every movement. Its quiet presence made the room feel less cold, less empty. Andy took a deep breath. I was taken about a week ago. I was on my way home from school. A dark-colored car stopped. A man asked for directions, and before I could answer, they grabbed me. His words were deliberate, measured, as if choosing each carefully to preserve the truth. He described the early days in an abandoned house at the edge of town. Windows were blocked, letting in almost no light. Food came through a small slot, and the click of locks became a familiar sound whenever they entered or left. I couldn't tell day from night, Andy said, staring into the distance. A few days before being brought to the cabin, he had tried to escape. One of them forgot to lock the back door, he remembered. I ran across an open area, but before I could reach the forest, they caught me. They were furious. Then they tied my hands and brought me here. Kiara's fingers pressed against her thigh, keeping her voice steady. And then Andy swallowed hard, eyes downcast. At the cabin, I was locked in that corner. He pointed toward the rotting wooden board where Kiara had found him, alone. I heard them say I'd soon be moved again, maybe to point 4, where others were kept. Brady nudged closer, resting its head lightly against Andy's knee. The boy smiled faintly, stroking the warm amber coat. Then, this morning I heard a noise. At first I thought they were back, but through the crack I saw Brady. It was outside eyes searching for something. Andy said he'd felt safe seeing the dog. I signaled with my hand, and somehow it understood. It circled the cabin, then disappeared. I was afraid it would leave, but a few minutes later I heard your footsteps. Kiara nodded, recalling that moment. Brady led me straight to the cabin. Without it, we wouldn't have arrived in time. Andy looked up, still a little astonished. I never thought a dog could do that. It didn't leave, it came back leading someone to rescue me. He paused, gratitude shining in his eyes. Outside, autumn winds stirred the leaves, producing a soft rustle. Inside, Andy's story added another piece to the puzzle. A puzzle revealing a far larger, far more dangerous operation. Kiara's voice was calm, but firm. What you just told us will help us find the others, and you will be safe here with Brady and all of us by your side." Brady drew in a quiet breath, lying down next to Andy's feet, affirming the promise. Its eyes watched the doorway alert, yet its body radiated warmth and protection. In that moment, Kiara knew the story was far from over. What they had uncovered was only the first step into the heart of the mystery. And to reach the end, they would need courage, patience, and Brady's unwavering guidance. After Andy finished recounting the days of his captivity, Kiara allowed a quiet moment for the boy to catch his breath. Brady lay close by, head slightly tilted, amber eyes fixed on Kiara as if waiting. The cabin still carried the heavy scent of damp wood, but now it was warmed by the sense of temporary safety that the dog brought. Kiara knelt, placing her hand on Brady's dark golden coat. He shifted closer, leaning against her, as if offering a portion of his strength. Looking into his eyes, she sensed something deeper than the stoicism he showed. An ache long held inside. "Brady," she said softly, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I want to understand why you were injured like this." The dog didn't respond with a bark or movement, only lifting his head to look straight at her, eyes steady and calm. It was as if he knew she wanted to hear his story. Kiara spoke slowly, each word deliberate, filled with respect. "Before we met, you were a working canine. You served on dangerous missions, protecting teammates and searching for the missing. But on a critical assignment, you were left behind." Brady lifted his lips slightly as if recalling the memory. His eyes flickered with sadness, the light within them shimmering like a pool hidden deep in the forest. She continued, "During a rescue, you became separated from your unit and lost contact with your handler. You had to navigate alone through perilous terrain. Dense forests, treacherous streams, enduring wounds and hunger." Kiara drew a long breath, feeling the strength and resilience radiating from the dog. "You didn't give up. Despite your injuries, you continued the mission, eventually finding your way back and reuniting with those you were protecting." Andy looked up, eyes wide with awe and fear. "Brady, so brave," he whispered, voice trembling. Brady rested his head on Kiara's hand, panting softly. He had endured so much pain, yet that pain had never diminished his loyalty or his indomitable will. Kiara felt his heartbeat, a steady power flowing through every muscle, every strand of fur. The story left her momentarily speechless. In Kiara's mind, the image of the canine was more than that of a mission-trained soldier. He was living proof of absolute loyalty, surpassing every trial, every hurt, and every lonely hour. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, picturing the dog alone in the forest, navigating treacherous terrain with the sole aim of completing the mission. The scars he bore were not just physical marks, but evidence of the will and perseverance he had endured. "You've endured things no one else could understand," Kiara whispered. "But now, you are here with us. And because of you, Andy is safe." Brady let out a soft whine, acknowledging her words, then lifted his head. His eyes remained on Kiara, but the tension had eased, replaced with a quiet gentleness. Andy looked at the dog, then back at Kiara, eyes wide with trust and hope. He seemed to understand that Brady's courage had not only saved him, but also taught him the strength of loyalty and willpower. Kiara inhaled deeply, feeling Brady's steady breaths. She realized this was no ordinary rescue mission. It was a journey of trust, where human and animal worked in tandem to face darkness and danger. She glanced around the old cabin. The scratched floorboards, the mossy walls, and the shafts of light filtering through the cracks. Everything seemed to reflect the past, the trials, and the unanswered mysteries. Yet now, with Brady by her side, Kiara felt ready to move forward. "We won't stop here," she said to Andy and Brady. "The story isn't over. We have to uncover the truth, no matter how difficult it gets." Brady lifted his head, eyes glinting with determination, ears pricked forward. a clear signal that the mission wasn't over and that he was ready to go to the end with Kiara and Andy. In that moment, the cabin no longer felt confining or fearsome. It became a starting point where a team formed unexpectedly between human and dog, where courage and loyalty were proven through action, and where the future of crucial leads began to emerge. As the morning light filtered through the Everpine canopy, Kiara, Brady, and Andy, alongside the investigation team, set out on the next leg of their journey. The old map lay spread across the cabin table, red markings faded by time, but still guiding the way. The old phone they had found had been activated, preserving encrypted messages and call logs that could reveal the gathering points of the kidnappers. They followed the map along overgrown trails, through forested patches where light rarely penetrated. Brady led the way, nose to the ground, body tense, breathing steady yet intense. Kiara followed closely, holding Andy's hand, eyes scanning every branch and tree trunk. Though still trembling, Andy's gaze slowly steadied, recognizing Brady as a reliable protector. Their first stop was near a small creek where the map marked an open area with a faint X1 symbol. On arrival, the team found fresh signs: scraped soft earth, faint tire tracks, and blurred shoe prints from the morning dew. Kiara knelt, hand brushing over the soil, sensing each trace. "These are recent signs," she said, voice low but certain. "They passed through not long ago." Brady let out a soft bark, lowering his body as if signaling caution. The footprints led straight into a dense thicket, vanishing into the shadowed forest. The team followed silently, careful with each step. Cuffs, flashlights, rescue gear, all ready. Next, they moved toward a small hill marked X2 on the map. There they found abandoned items, a torn backpack, a few water bottles, and some ripped fabric. Kiara carefully picked up each piece, preserving them as evidence, eyes focused entirely. Andy watched, tracking every motion of Kiara and Brady, seemingly learning how to read the forest clues. Brady led the group onward this time, toward a deeper forest area near the spot labeled X3 on the map. The space was so still that even the wind whispering through the leaves sounded sharp. Brady inhaled each breath, pausing to observe, then glanced back at Kiara as if saying, "Keep going. We're close." As they approached X3, a derelict wooden cabin emerged, its roof-rotted windows shattered and walls covered in moss. The exterior sign suggested it had once been used, but it was now abandoned. The investigative team quickly spread out to check the perimeter. A few scraps of old paper were scattered around, bearing symbols that matched those on the map. Kiara picked one up, eyes lighting up as realization dawned. These weren't isolated incidents of captivity. They were part of a sophisticated network with multiple locations set up by the kidnappers to hide victims and evidence. Andy, still clutching the blanket tightly, spoke in a trembling but clear voice. "They aren't just a small group. There are other places and other people." Kiara nodded, sensing the fear mixed with determination in his voice. "You're right. This is an organized network. We have to find all the locations to protect others and dismantle their plan." Brady shifted slightly, nose sniffing the air as if detecting traces invisible to humans. It leapt onto a boulder, gazing deeper into the forest. Kiara understood the message. More clues lay ahead, and she would need Brady's keen senses to uncover them. The team continued navigating uneven paths, icy streams, and tangled roots. Each step was calculated, fast enough to reach the sites, but careful enough to keep Andy safe and preserve any traces. Their breathing blended with the forest sounds, occasionally punctuated by Brady's soft bark, bringing life to the otherwise suffocating silence. As they reached the next point on the map, Kiara realized each location revealed a piece of the kidnappers' plan. Abandoned supplies, scratch marks, and inked symbols on old papers suggested the victims were not just held captive. They were meticulously monitored and moved between sites in the forest. They had a route planned, Kiara said, eyes fixed on the map and the collected papers. This is just the tip, but it shows the scale. Andy shivered, eyes still on Brady. The dog paused for a moment, then leapt down, leading them deeper into the forest, where thick foliage blocked out the light. Kiara looked at Andy, then at Brady. She knew they had reached the most critical phase of the investigation. Finding these suspicious sites was not just about collecting clues. It was the first step in dismantling a dangerous criminal network where each hiding place held a story and potentially more victims yet to be rescued. With the map, the papers, the old phone, and Brady's guidance, they could follow each trace, inching closer to the truth. Once peaceful and quiet, the Everpine Forest had now become a labyrinth of clues and danger, where they had to watch, stay safe, and prepare for the unexpected. The forest was bathed in the half-light of dusk. Golden red leaves rustled in the wind, forming a natural veil that obscured everything at a distance. Kiara stood near an ancient tree, eyes fixed on the trail ahead, hand gripping the radio. Brady stood at the forefront, nose to the ground, body taut as a bowstring ready to track. Special Forces members in dark uniforms had spread out around the suspicious area, hiding under tree cover and silently observing potential paths, prepared for any criminal movement. Kiara felt the rhythm of every heartbeat sync with the forest's pulse, slow but tense, ready to snap into action at the signal. Brady moved forward slowly, sniffing the air. It traced the soft soil and dry leaves, detecting any anomaly. Each breath and step reflected its training and unwavering focus. Minutes passed in tense silence. Suddenly, Brady stopped, ears pricked, amber eyes shining like a warning beacon. It turned to Kiara, signaling with a glance, and a low whine movement detected. Kiara gripped the radio voice, low but sharp. "Everyone stay silent. Confirm positions." The team moved quietly, following Brady's lead. The forest seemed heavier, every sound amplified, snapping branches, rustling leaves, even their own breathing through tactical gear. Brady approached a dense bush near the trail's edge, lifted a paw lightly, nose to the ground, then looked back at Kiara as if to say, "Here, follow this trace." Kiara nodded, advancing a few steps, eyes scanning. A small piece of fabric caught on a root, fresh mud marks nearby. It confirmed recent human presence. The next moments demanded total focus from the team. Members secured positions, readying handcuffs, flashlights, and weapons. Brady continued tracking, guiding them deeper into the thicket, every step silent. Then footsteps echoed ahead. A group appeared. 5 people in single file, carrying backpacks and items clearly linked to illegal activity. They hadn't noticed the ambush. Brady edged closer, sniffing each footfall, amber eyes radiating absolute vigilance. Kiara whispered, "Get ready." On Brady's signal, move in and subdue. The rustling leaves reminded them they had only seconds. Brady paused, head lowered, then let out a deep, sharp bark, clear and decisive. Instantly, the Special Forces surged from multiple angles. The criminals were caught off guard, trying to resist, but Brady's distraction gave the team the advantage. The dog lunged like a gust of wind, clamping onto the ringleader's arm, pulling him back from the group. Other agents quickly restrained and handcuffed each individual. One tried to flee toward the forest, but Brady intercepted, using its body to block the path and barking to alert the team. Within moments of controlled chaos, every suspect was subdued, lying on the leaf-covered ground. Kiara inhaled deeply, eyes shining with pride as she looked at Brady. The dog had executed the mission perfectly, leading, alerting, and striking at the right moment. Andy stood nearby, eyes bright, a smile finally breaking through after days of tension. The team searched each suspect, confiscating weapons, papers, and suspicious items. Kiara knelt beside Andy, hand on his shoulder, voice gentle. "We did it, Andy. Thanks to Brady and everyone, we stopped them." Brady remained still, panting eyes scanning the forest, ensuring no further danger remained. The forest fell silent again, the only sounds their breathing and leaves rustling in the wind. Kiara looked at the task force, her gaze serious, yet brimming with determination. The kidnapping network they had been tracking had been partially dismantled, but many other locations on the map still awaited investigation. Brady let out a low whine, a subtle reminder that the mission was far from over. Andy looked at the dog, his eyes full of gratitude and trust. He edged closer, placing a hand gently on Brady's head, feeling the strength and loyalty radiating from the K9. Kiara smiled, realizing that it wasn't just the boy. The entire team drew strength from this remarkable dog. The scraps of paper, the map, and the old phones they had collected had now become vital clues to track the remaining suspicious locations. Everyone understood that challenges still lay ahead, but with the coordinated efforts of Brady, Kiara, Andy, and the task force, they were ready to face whatever danger awaited. Sunlight streamed through the Everpine canopy, casting golden rays on the treetops and spreading a thin, velvety mist over the forest floor. After days of chaos, the woods had returned to tranquility. Birds chirped softly, leaves rustled in the wind, composing a natural symphony that contrasted sharply with the tense sounds of the recent chase and ambush. Kiara stood on the flat ground in front of the cabin, her eyes following Brady as he moved around the area. His amber coat glimmered in the early light, and though his gaze was still alert, the tension had eased. The temporary bandages on his shoulder and legs reminded her of the dangers they had just faced. But Brady seemed to sense that for now, the threat had passed. Andy, now in cleaner clothes, was escorted out of the forest by support personnel. The boy held his head high, eyes shining with joy, mingled with exhaustion. During his days of captivity, he had relied solely on his instincts and patience. But now, returned to the safety of his family, he felt completely secure for the first time. Walking along the trail back to town, Kiara kept pace beside him, her hand lightly resting on his shoulder. "You're going home safely now, Andy?" she said, her voice soft yet resolute. He nodded, eyes brimming with emotion, as the morning light washed over his face, seemingly erasing the painful memories of the days past. Brady walked alongside Kiara, ears erect, eyes never leaving Andy. The bond was clear. The dog had formed a new connection, not just with Kiara, but with the boy it had saved. She gently stroked Brady's head, feeling his heartbeat sync with her own. At the ranger station, the task force completed their reports, collected the evidence, and handed the suspects over to law enforcement. Kiara watched as Andy received care, a health check, and was finally reunited with his family. A middle-aged woman approached, embracing the boy tightly, tears streaming down her face. Andy smiled faintly, resting his head against his mother's shoulder, basking in a warmth he had been denied for days. Brady remained vigilant, ears oriented toward Andy, ensuring his safety before finally returning to Kiara's side. Kiara bent down and whispered, "It's over, Brady. We did it." The dog gave a gentle nod, amber eyes shining with understanding. He had walked through the tension, the chase, and the danger alongside Kiara, protecting Andy, and now he could finally relax, at least until the next mission arose. After Andy was safely handed over, Kiara returned to the cabin with Brady. The Everpine Forest was so quiet that even a falling leaf sounded loud. Kiara took a deep breath, feeling her own warmth mingle with Brady's. She knew that from this moment on, the dog would be more than just a rescue K9. It would be her loyal companion, an inseparable partner on all future forest patrols. Inside the cabin, Kiara prepared a temporary resting spot for Brady. She spread a clean blanket on the wooden floor and placed food and water nearby. Brady sniffed the familiar scents, his eyes gleaming softly before lying down, with his head resting lightly on the blanket. Kiara sat beside him, gently stroking his thick, warm fur. She recalled the past days, the chase through the dense forest, the tense confrontations with the kidnappers, Andy's fearful eyes, and Brady's extraordinary courage. Each moment had created an indelible memory, reminding her of the importance of loyalty, courage, and the partnership between humans and animals. Kiara closed her eyes for a moment, feeling Brady's steady breathing, then looked out the window. The sunrise filtered through the trees, casting a warm glow over the forest floor. Everpine seemed to sigh in relief after the tense days. Andy was safe with his family, Brady had become her companion, and the forest had returned to peace. But within Kiara, she knew the bravery, loyalty, and experiences they had shared would leave a lasting mark, a foundation for the challenges to come. The wind whispered through the trees. Birdsong echoed in the distance, and Brady lifted his head, amber eyes bright as he realized a new dawn had truly arrived. A dawn not just for the forest, but for courage, loyalty, and the bonds they had forged. Kiara smiled, running her hand along Brady's back. "We made it, my partner, and now a new chapter begins." Brady wagged his tail, gently nudged her hand with his paw, as if confirming that no matter the mission ahead, they would always stand side by side. The sunrise bathed Everpine in warm golden light, heralding a new beginning for Kiara, Brady, and all those who had emerged from darkness to find hope. Suddenly, the radio beside her crackled. A new message from the center broke the morning calm. Kiara lifted it, voice steady. "Kiara here." The voice from the center came through. "Report of a suspicious incident near the northern border of the reserve. Estimated distance 5 kilometers from the patrol station. Requires verification and investigation." Kiara drew in a deep breath, her eyes flashing with determination. Brady lifted his head, ears pricked high as if sensing the resolve in her voice. The dog rose, stretching his muscles, taut eyes glowing with alert focus, yet calm control. "Seems the mission isn't over yet, my partner," Kiara whispered. Brady responded with a low, affirming whine, acknowledging that they would continue side by side. She scanned the sanctuary, now quiet. After the most tense days, the old cabin footprints in the damp earth, streaks of dried mud, traces of the chase. They all remained as vivid memories. Every corner of the forest reminded her of the challenges they had faced, of Andy, of the criminal network they had only just begun to dismantle. Kiara stood gently stroking Brady's head. The dog glanced at her, then stepped forward, nose sniffing the evening air, ready for the next path. Each of Brady's steps seemed to give her courage, a silent reminder that they were a team, and whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Her eyes swept across the porch. She slung her backpack over her shoulder, ready for the next journey. The radio remained in her hand, poised to send a signal at a moment's notice. In that instant, Everpine Forest stretched before her, like a living map, trails, streams, and tree canopies, all markers guiding the way. Kiara knew that her experience and instincts, combined with Brady's extraordinary senses, would be the key to facing whatever mission awaited. The last light of sunset filtered through the branches, casting her face in shades of determination, softened by quiet warmth. Brady settled beside her head, resting on her feet, sending a clear message. "We're ready." The radio crackled again with a brief update. "Kiara, the patrol team has detected suspicious signs on the eastern trail. Immediate check required." Kiara looked at Brady. His amber eyes sparked, and he leapt lightly, poised for action. She nodded, feeling the rhythm of his breathing sync with her own heartbeat. "Let's go, Brady. The journey isn't over, and Everpine still needs us," she said, voice low and resolute. Brady rose fully, every muscle taut like a drawn bow tail, wagging lightly but with purpose. He led the way across the small clearing before the cabin, nose to the ground, scanning for traces, eyes alert to every movement. Kiara followed closely, hand resting on his shoulder, absorbing his strength and acuity. Andy, now safe with his family, still lingered in her thoughts. Memories of the boy of fear and latent courage fueled her determination. Even more, she would continue for those who still needed help for Brady, the loyal companion, and for herself to seize every chance to safeguard justice and the forest's safety. Everpine remained silent, yet the fading light and gentle breeze hinted that a new journey had only begun. Each of Brady's steps on the dry leaves echoed clearly, harmonizing with Kiara's heartbeat, creating the rhythm of a team reunited in purpose and resolve. She gazed at the sunset sky hues of gold and crimson blending together and smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that with Brady by her side, they could overcome anything. The forest returned to calm, but memories of trials, danger, and courage remained vivid in their hearts. Kiara sat on the porch, Brady lying beside her, amber eyes fixed on her with unwavering trust. The scene was not just the end of a journey, but a living testament to the deep bond between humans and German shepherds, the silent, loyal warriors of extraordinary devotion. Through each chapter, the story speaks not only of rescue missions, chases, and facing peril, but also teaches lessons of loyalty, courage, and dedication. Brady, despite injuries and past hardships, remained steadfast, protecting Andy, guiding the way, and supporting Kiara. His actions remind us that loyalty and commitment can transcend physical limits, and fear, bringing life and hope to others. Andy returned to his family, Kiara regained trust in herself, and Brady found a home and lifelong companionship with the one he chose to journey alongside. This story inspires appreciation and love for animals, reminding us that the most profound messages often come not through words, but through steadfast, silent actions. Everpine, through every step of Kiara, Andy, and Brady, teaches that love, loyalty, and courage not only save lives, but inspire people to live better and act with kindness. It reminds us that in a world full of challenges, there are always those, human and canine alike, ready to protect, accompany, and awaken the best values within us. The journey is far from over, yet the message of love, perseverance, and devotion will continue to resonate, reminding everyone to live kindly and cherish the living beings around them.